The night that split my life into before and after started loud, rain slapping the palms, thunder crawling across the bay, the kind of Miami storm that makes glass hum, and right in the middle of it, Vanessa. Pierce Harrington's voice cracked through the atrium like a whip. "Ooh," she said now. And I stepped between her and Mr. Samuel Harrington, 78, retired colonel. Fingers shaking on the arms of his chair, whispering what he always told himself when the tremors came, "Steady, soldier." And then a crystal decanter lifted, hung there and flew. I threw up my forearm, glass burst into wine and blood, and that's when Cole Harrington came in from the storm, took one look, believed the wrong person, and fired me on the spot. Yeah, that happened. The gate closed behind me like a verdict rain, needling my uniform, a cheap towel around my arm, turning pink. And if you've ever walked away from a place that held your whole routine in its hands, you know the taste shame mixed with stubborn. I kept moving, shoes, slapping water, telling myself simple orders: breathe, step steady. I ended up at a 24-hour diner on Calle Ocho, neon buzzing coffee bitter, in a way that felt honest, a couple texts from the laundry crew blinking like caution lights. Some believed Vanessa, some didn't. Nobody wanted their name on anything. And around 2 in the morning, the bell over the door chimed, and in walked Cole out of place under fluorescent lights, eyes raw like the storm had gotten inside them. "I watched the footage," he said. "She threw it, you covered him," and the apology worked its way through his jaw before it found words. He set an envelope on the Formica new contract. Caregiver, not maid, a suite by the old man's room, money that could turn my little brother's inhalers from miracles into normal life. I was wrong, Naya, please come back, and I wasn't noble about it. I was tired, angry, proud, all the honest colors. "I'll come back for him, not your wife's temper," I said, and he nodded like a man who finally understood the price of his first mistake. When I rolled Mr. Harrington to the window, the next morning the bay looked scrubbed clean. The man smiled with the exact amount of dignity his bones would allow. "Back on duty," he rasped, and I answered the same. And inside the house everything was familiar and strange. At the same time, the whispers traveled faster than the carts. A driver who used to greet me stared right through me. A sous chef said to nobody in particular that some people rise too fast. The society columnists did that thing where they make your work smaller with a single word: maid, never caregiver. When they want you to sit back down and outside the gate, a news van idled just long enough to feel like a threat, so Cole did what men with money do. When rumor runs ahead of truth, he called a press conference, set a podium in the glass foyer, where light looks clean in photos, told the city that his father's life had been put in danger, and that a member of his household had stood between harm and a frail man, and the reporters asked if I'd been fired that night. I stepped up before he could answer. Yes, I was dismissed. I was accused of something I didn't do. It was the worst moment of my life, and if I saw that glass fly again, I'd stand in the same place, not for a paycheck, for his dignity. And the cameras clicked, but the room went quiet in a way that made me feel both seen and exposed, you know what I mean. 2 days later, the American Legion Hall on Flagler honored Mr. Harrington and asked me to sit beside him. The air smelled like coffee and old wood and stories. A woman with a chest full of ribbons squeezed my hand and said, "Courage isn't a uniform, it's a choice," and in that room I believed her completely. Then the choice followed me home, shadows collecting at the edges of the property. A man in a ball cap watching too long from the sidewalk. Security moving him along, a drone nosing the hibiscus. At dusk, the kind of attention that leaves your shoulders tight, even when you're pouring tea. "They're loud today," Mr. Harrington said. Voice easy, the way only a man with miles can be. "They'll tire themselves out," and I nodded, told myself the same thing. Started sleeping with my shoes by the bed anyway. The break came on a night that looked like the first one, rain slanting, power flirting with black. A pane of glass cried out somewhere down the hall. "I killed the lamp," told the old man softly, "to stay still." The door eased open, the cap from the fence stepped inside with rain slicking his jacket, and something sharp catching the lightning, his voice low and practiced. "People like you don't get this far without paying," and the part of me that thinks before moving was already off duty. I smashed a lamp to blind him, with the burst. Lunged for his wrist. He was stronger. I was loud. Guards thundered in coal right behind them. In a handful of heartbeats, the man was face down, zip ties on and face twisted. "You'll never belong here," he spat. And I remember thinking how predictable that word is when people feel a ladder kicking out from under their shoes. The prince came back to a name, with the kind of resume that makes cops stare at the middle distance, bounced security, contractor, bar fights, debts, and a string of transfers tied to a media fixer. Vanessa had used when she liked smoke more than repair. Which is how everything shifted from gossip to gravity. Bank records, shell companies, first names on burner phones, a mess. You can't mop. And when people like that fail. In the dark, they yanked the lights out for everyone. A hearing got called at City Hall, watchdogs. Invited the press, marble stairs made our footsteps sound too important. We sat at a long table with microphones. That thin your voice, Cole, laid out wires and money, Mr. Harrington leaned into his mic and said, "When you're weak, the right person standing in the doorway means everything." And then it was my turn. Hands damp, heartbeat audible. "I didn't ask to be here," I said. "I clean a floor until you can see your whole face in it. I bring a man his tea the way he likes it, because small rituals matter when you don't own your days, and when harm came, I stood where I needed to. Not for applause, for what's right and right." Then a man in a suit lifted a folder, like a magic trick, handed it to a blogger, who smiled the way people do when they think they own the last word. Screens filled with scans from a life I don't. Trophy, a juvenile charge. From when my mother got sick and the fridge went quiet. A fight outside a bodega that reads uglier on paper than it felt in the moment. "Is this your hero?" he said, and you could feel the room lean back for drama. Mr. Harrington's voice cut through like gravel with purpose. She was 15 and hungry. She's 30 now and brave, and I swallowed the heat in my throat. "Yes," I said. "I messed up as a kid. My life got heavy early. What I do when someone needs me now, that's who I am. I will not break." And that sentence left me like a promise. I finally spoke to myself out loud. The days after the hearing were strobe lights, bright praise, dark threats, then bright again, letters from veterans who said being carried once saved them flowers from strangers with notes folded small. Then an envelope with a long lens photo of me and the old man in the garden, and 4 words in red. "I see you, the FBI set up in the library, told us visibility can be safety, so I sat for one careful interview. The journalist asked if I felt like a hero. I said, heroes are a big word. I'm smaller on purpose. I just didn't step aside. He asked what I'd say to people who think I don't belong under chandeliers. Belonging isn't where you start, I said. It's where you stand. And I stood where I was needed. And the night before, we were set to hand our files to federal prosecutors. The house got that thin quiet that makes you listen harder. A car blew at the outer gate to pull bodies away, alarms, screaming lights, shivering men in masks used a service door. Sometimes your life is a movie, whether you want one or not. A gunman stepped into our hallway and smiled like he'd written the ending. All this because a maid forgot her place, he said, aiming at the old man, and everything sped up. An agent's warning shot cracked the corridor. Cole took the shooter into a table hard enough to make splinters fly. I shoved Mr. Harrington's chair through smoke toward the reinforced sweet fingers, shaking so bad I told them out loud to steady, steady. By dawn, cuffs jangled on the front steps, evidence loaded into vans, and a woman with mascara like war paint screaming that we took everything. Vanessa eyes wild with a kind of fury that eats its own. You gave it away, I told her, and for the first time since the decanter, our part of the story felt simple. That evening we stood in the garden hibiscus, showing off, like they didn't care about crime scene tape staff, forming the shape of a circle that wasn't perfect, but was honest. Cole raised a glass to loyalty and truth, and to the woman who reminded him what it looks like to stand. Some people who'd avoided my eyes finally found them. Others kept their chins up and their mouths closed. Respect wears different clothes. Mr. Harrington took my hand and said, "Family isn't blood only, it's honor." And I felt something unclench in my chest. That wasn't comfort exactly, but it was near it. Belonging is too big a word to throw around. But I knew which doorway was mine if trouble came back. People ask if I forgive them. Vanessa, the whisperers, the ones who posted my worst day like a trophy. Forgiveness isn't a gift I owe on a schedule. What I know is money buys microphones and lawyers. Until it runs into somebody who won't move, then money gets loud. And sometimes loud looks like power, until someone speaks plain enough to quiet it. That night in the atrium, I didn't think about rich or poor. I saw a man who spent his strength and deserved someone to stand when he couldn't. I thought about the girl I used to be staring at an empty fridge, and I wanted to tell her she gets a future where doing the right thing doesn't need permission. And if you're still with me listening, tell me this in the comments. Did I overstep? Or did the machine try to crush somebody? It thought was small. Would you judge me by the worst thing I did at 15? Or by the choice I made when glass was flying? Have you ever watched a room prefer a pretty lie to an ugly truth? Yeah. Say where you're watching from what you've seen, where you stand. And if you've ever had to choose between belonging and doing what's right, tell us how that turned out.